Have you ever wondered what really happens when a narcissist is fully exposed? When there's nowhere left to run, no lies left to spin, just truth raw and undeniable. In that moment, the mask drops, and what you'll witness is something they never wanted anyone to see: silent panic, animalistic rage, and a paralyzing fear of being seen for who they truly are. Most people assume a narcissist would just lash out or walk away, but the truth is much darker and more twisted. Beneath the surface lies a psychological meltdown, a collapse of the false self they've been clinging to, a storm of shame, fear, and fury they can no longer contain. In today's video, you'll discover the 8 deepest psychological reactions a narcissist experiences when you expose them. These are the feelings they'll never admit, the emotions they'll fight to suppress. But you deserve to know, because knowledge is your greatest weapon in healing from narcissistic abuse. So if you've ever been confused by their silence, or shocked by how vicious they became after you finally spoke your truth, this video is for you. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and watch until the very end. Because understanding what you're truly dealing with could change everything. Let the truth set you free. 1. Silent panic. The collapse behind the mask. The moment you say with certainty, "I know who you are, I've seen through you," the narcissist doesn't simply fall apart, they panic. But it's not the kind of panic you'd expect from a normal person. There are no tears, no shouting, no desperate pleas. What you'll see instead is silence, an eerie, unnatural silence. And it's within that silence that a true psychological storm begins to unfold inside them. Narcissists lack the capacity for healthy self-reflection. They build themselves upon layers of masks: intelligence, kindness, victimhood, even heroism. But these are just facades, carefully crafted to conceal a fragile, hollow, and terrified inner self. When you start peeling back those masks, you're not just exposing their true nature. You're striking directly at the heart of their carefully constructed false identity. To them, being exposed is more than just losing face. It's like being skinned alive. They feel naked, vulnerable, and with nowhere to hide. Inside their mind, a massive void begins to open, a place where no one believes in the character they've so carefully played. The control they once had over the narrative vanishes. And for someone who survives by manipulating and controlling others, this is nothing short of an existential crisis. You might notice this reaction through their sudden and eerie quietness. They stop responding. No blame shifting, no gaslighting. At least not immediately. But don't mistake this stillness for strength or calm. Inside their mind is a flood of panic. How much does she know? Has anyone else figured it out? Where did I slip up? They're spinning, not out of heartbreak, but out of a loss of control. What many people don't realize is this: narcissists never thought you'd be strong enough to confront them. In the script they wrote for you, you were supposed to stay confused, apologetic, dependent. They bet on your silence, on your self-doubt. So when you stand firm, call out the truth, and shatter the illusion, they're blindsided. You just did what they feared most. Don't confuse their silence with serenity. Inside it's a war zone. They're scrambling to recover control. But in those brief initial moments you've done something they never prepared for. You made them confront themselves. And for a narcissist, that is their greatest fear. They cannot survive in the light of truth. Narcissists dwell in the shadows, where they twist emotions, create confusion, and manipulate guilt. But when you shine a spotlight on them, everything becomes too clear to deny, and in that moment their carefully curated world begins to crumble. This silent panic may soon be followed by rage, retaliation, or renewed manipulation. But in the beginning, what they truly feel is raw, primal fear. Fear of being seen, fear of being understood, fear of losing their grip on you. And here's the harsh truth no one wants to say out loud. Narcissists don't fear losing you because they love you. They fear losing you because you were a mirror, reflecting and reinforcing their false sense of self. When you expose them, you're not just ending a relationship, you're refusing to be a character in their script. You're destroying the illusion that held their identity together. Their internal world begins to crack, but no one sees it. On the outside, they might smirk, deflect, or say something cold like, "Think what you want," or "That's your opinion." But those words? They're the sirens of a mind in crisis. They're not ready to fight yet, they're still stunned. They fear what you might say next. They fear others might start believing you. They fear your silence, your truth, your clarity. They will never say it out loud. They'll never admit, "I'm terrified, I'm unraveling," but you'll feel it. Their silence is no longer a weapon. It's the thin ice cracking under a collapsing false self. And that, right there, is the very first, and perhaps the most profound, sign that you've struck the one place a narcissist cannot defend. 2. Animalistic rage, when the mask fights back. When you expose a narcissist with clarity, armed with undeniable truth, you don't just make them feel vulnerable, you ignite something much darker, a primal, animalistic rage. This isn't ordinary anger. It's not sadness, regret, or even heartbreak. This is the fury of a predator who suddenly realizes they've become the prey. Why so extreme? Because you've done the one thing they never thought you could. You pierced their perfect mask. And for someone who survives on image and control, that's psychological assassination. They feel violated, not because you did something wrong, but because you dared to do something right. You dared to name the truth they've spent years covering up with manipulation and deceit. When this rage erupts, they are no longer the composed, persuasive person you once knew. They transform into a destructive force, hell-bent on annihilating anyone who threatens their false sense of self. Their voice changes, their eyes turn cold, their words become razor-sharp weapons. They will weaponize anything within reach. Baseless accusations, character assassination, and even old wounds from your past. They'll lie without shame, distort facts, and twist everything to frame you as the villain. You might wonder, why are they reacting this violently? I only spoke the truth. Because to a narcissist, truth isn't sacred, it's dangerous. And the messenger of that truth? You become the target. That's why you'll often see them launch an immediate smear campaign, calling friends, family, even co-workers to flip the story. Suddenly, you're the crazy one, the unstable one, the manipulative one. They deploy Darvo tactics: deny, attack, reverse, victim and offender. They confuse people, blur the lines, and disturbingly, sometimes they're believed. Here's what most don't understand. This rage is both emotional and strategic. They know that if they attack hard enough, fast enough, and cruel enough, you might retreat, you might doubt yourself, you might get tired, and finally, you might go silent. And your silence? That's their victory, because when you go quiet, the truth dies with your voice. But if you stay aware, if you recognize this pattern for what it is, you'll see the truth. Their rage is not strength, it's fear. This is what a loss of control looks like for someone who's built their entire identity on dominance. You didn't just end a relationship, you took away their supply. You were a mirror reflecting their power. Now you've shattered it, and they're panicking. This is also the most dangerous moment. A narcissist in rage is capable of cruelty that defies logic, not because they hate you, but because you've touched the deepest part of their psychology, their terror of being seen, known, and exposed. They'd rather destroy everything than let the mask come off. So, if you've ever experienced brutal backlash after telling the truth, don't second-guess yourself. That reaction proves one thing: you hit the nerve, you reached the place they tried to bury forever. And if you can stay grounded, stay silent, stay emotionally unmoved, they will collapse faster than any argument ever could. Remember, narcissists don't rage because they care. They rage because they can't afford for the illusion to die. Your truth is poison to their persona, and the louder they roar, the more afraid they truly are. 3. Fear of public exposure, when image matters more than truth. Nothing terrifies a narcissist more than being exposed in public. To them, truth is not something to embrace, it's something to control. And when you're the one brave enough to rip off the mask, you're not just hurting their fragile ego, you're threatening to destroy the entire illusion they've spent years constructing through deception. They don't panic because what you said is false, they panic because it's true. Painfully, undeniably true. And what terrifies them most isn't that you know, but that other people will know too. A narcissist lives for their image. Every word, every gesture, every calculated smile is carefully curated to maintain a flawless public persona. The good person, the successful partner, the loving friend. But the moment you step forward and say, "Here's the truth," their entire world begins to collapse. They can't bear the idea that someone, especially you, holds the power to unravel the story they've told everyone else. So they begin their version of damage control. They'll make calls, send frantic messages, spin new lies, cry, beg, play the victim, anything to silence you, because if you don't shut up, you become a threat to their greatest supply: admiration, approval, and control. If you have influence, if you have a voice others listen to, they will spiral into a deeper panic. That's when they'll try to discredit you. You'll be labeled bitter, vengeful, emotionally unstable. They'll twist your words, assign you false motives, and even create alternative versions of the truth to confuse your supporters. But behind all those tactics is one primitive fear: the fear of being seen for who they truly are. Because the truth is, they're not strong, they're not happy, they're not untouchable. They're just good at pretending, and what they fear most isn't being hated, it's being ignored, being called out, losing control. If you've ever stood up and exposed a narcissist and watched them spiral into chaos, don't doubt yourself. You didn't destroy their image. They built it on a lie. You just told the truth, and truth is their greatest enemy. That truth makes you more powerful than they ever expected. That's why they panic. 4. Abandonment shame, disguised as superiority. You can leave or stay, makes no difference to me. Sounds indifferent, doesn't it? But don't be fooled by that facade. Beneath the cold exterior is a soul quietly bleeding, not from heartbreak, but from the collapse of control. To a narcissist, your departure isn't just the end of a relationship, it's the downfall of an entire power structure. You're no longer there to offer admiration, compliance, or emotional energy, resources they fed on daily, and that doesn't just confuse them, it terrifies them. But you'll never see that fear openly, because a narcissist never wants you to know just how deeply they depended on you. Instead of admitting to the terror of abandonment, they cloak it in disdain. They craft the image of someone unbothered, someone who's moved on, someone too strong to care. But it's all theatre, a cheap act to preserve the last remnants of control over a relationship that's already unraveled. The truth is, they were far more dependent on you than you ever realized. Not for love, but for validation. You were their mirror, their stage, their audience. When you left, they lost the script, and the emptiness that follows is deafening. But rather than confront that emptiness, they wrap themselves in arrogance. They start telling others you were weak, unworthy, or that you simply gave up. They flip the narrative to paint you as the quitter and themselves as the one who rose above. In their retelling, they are the victor. Even if they were the one left behind, that's how they survive, by distorting reality. But do you know what truly cuts the deepest? It's not just that you left, it's that you left quietly. No begging, no arguing, no need for closure. That calm, confident silence drives them insane. Because in the narcissist's world, the moment you stop reacting, they stop existing. Their "I don't care" attitude is a lie built on their most primal fear, the fear of being irrelevant. And to hide that truth, They'll go to extremes to prove how superior they are. They might jump into a new relationship, flaunt their perfect life online, post photos dripping with fake joy, all to send one message: I never needed you. But here's the reality. They're desperately trying to convince themselves of that, because deep down they know no one will ever play the role you did. No one else has seen them as clearly as you did, and that terrifies them, because you're the one who saw through them and still had the strength to walk away. 5. Shame turned into hatred. When you expose a narcissist, you're not just tearing off a mask. You're striking at the core of a wound they've spent their entire life trying to hide: shame. But this isn't the kind of guilt that healthy people feel when they've done something wrong. This is a deep, chronic shame, tied to an inner belief that they are unworthy, broken, and fundamentally defective. And here's what you need to understand. Narcissists don't know how to process shame. They don't know how to reflect, repent, or grow. To them, shame is not a path to healing, it's a threat to their very existence. It's a mirror they cannot bear to look into. So instead of sitting with it, they turn it into hatred. They don't hate you because you lied. They don't hate you because you betrayed them. They hate you because you saw them. You dared to look past the charm, the performance, the mask, and you saw the brokenness underneath. And even worse, you didn't just see it, you said it out loud. When that internal shame bubbles to the surface, a narcissist doesn't reach for healing, they reach for ammunition. You become the enemy. You're the traitor, the problem, the monster in their rewritten version of reality. They twist the story to make you the villain, not because it's true, but because accepting the truth would mean accepting responsibility, and they cannot do that. Instead, they lash out. Words become weapons. They launch smear campaigns. They gossip, manipulate, and try to isolate you. And you're left wondering, how did someone who once claimed to love me turn into this? But the truth is, they never truly loved you as a person. They loved the control they had over you. They loved being admired, being right, being the center of your emotional world. And when you shattered that illusion, you triggered the thing they fear most, the realization that they are not who they pretend to be. So they hate you for it. They hate you because you illuminated a truth they desperately needed to keep hidden, and worse, because you had the strength to walk away while they were still clinging to the role they wanted you to play. And the harshest truth of all? They don't just hate you, they hate themselves. But because they're emotionally incapable of owning that self-hatred, they project it outward. You become the vessel that carries their shame, their rage, their regret. If you've ever felt confused by the sheer intensity of a narcissist's sudden hatred, this is why. You weren't the one who changed. You simply stopped believing the lie. You broke the spell. And for someone whose entire identity depends on the illusion of perfection, that's the ultimate betrayal. But don't let that hatred make you doubt yourself. Don't let it pull you back into their darkness. You didn't destroy them. You just stopped feeding their illusion. And the pain they feel? It's not your fault. It's the cost of living a lie too long and finally being seen. 6. Emotional disintegration and identity collapse. One of the most devastating consequences a narcissist faces when fully exposed isn't shame and it isn't rage. It's the quiet collapse of their inner identity. When you say, "I know who you really are, I've seen through you," you're not just shaking their public image. You're shattering the mirror of illusion they've been staring into their entire life. Understand this. A narcissist doesn't build their identity from within like a healthy person does. They don't form it through reflection, values, or emotional depth. Their sense of self is constructed from the gaze of others. Every compliment, every ounce of admiration, every act of submission. These are the building blocks of the ideal self they believe will finally make them lovable, But when you expose them, when you stop fearing them, stop admiring them, stop playing their game, that false identity begins to crack and crumble, and what follows is a deep identity crisis. They begin to panic internally. If I can't control her anymore, then who am I? If she no longer believes me, what's the point of my presence? If I can't manipulate her reality, do I have any power left? These questions are never spoken out loud, but they scream inside their mind, dismantling the cold, calculated persona they once maintained. Then comes the emotional chaos. Anger, because you're no longer playing the obedient role. Fear, because they don't know how to exist in a world where you're free. Jealousy, because you've attained something they never will. Inner freedom, and most of all, emptiness. Without you, they lose their emotional mirror, the source that reflected back their self-worth. Without someone to manipulate, they don't know how to function. That's when disintegration begins. Sometimes they'll laugh it off, pretending they're unaffected, but look into their eyes. They're hollow. There's no conviction, no power, no direction. Because you've taken back what they feared losing the most, your validation. Identity collapse doesn't happen with drama. It happens in isolation, in the sleepless nights when no one texts back, in the days they stare at their own reflection and don't recognize who's looking back, in those haunting moments when all their old tricks no longer work, not even on themselves, and when they finally realize no one believes them anymore, that's when their ego begins to die. 7. Crushing isolation and emotional starvation. When you walk away, you don't just leave an empty space in their schedule, you leave a gaping hole in their emotional nervous system, a void where your attention, your reactions, and your energy once lived. A narcissist doesn't survive on love, they survive on your reaction. Every time you cried, got angry, begged, explained, or defended yourself, you were feeding them proof that they still existed in your world. They didn't need your happiness, they needed your emotional investment. But when you expose them and then go silent, when you stop arguing, stop chasing, stop playing the role of the one who understands, they fall into a state of emotional starvation they are psychologically unequipped to handle. Without you, they lose their main emotional fuel source. The new supply, the exes, the co-workers, the flying monkeys, none of them offer the same high. And the special magic, there's the silence, the sustainer, the exonic delusion, the flying monkeys, none of them offer the same high. Because you were the one who knew everything, the one who saw the darkness and still stayed. For a time. And that gave them a false sense of power that no one else could replicate. Now, your silence becomes their torment. They check their messages, they stalk your social media, they probe mutual friends, not because they care, but because they need to know if you're still hurting. Because if you've healed, then it means they've lost control. And what follows next is isolation, not the ordinary kind, but a crushing, soul-deep isolation, where they're trapped in the very world of manipulation they created. They can't trust anyone, because they've never been honest with anyone. They can't apologize, because their ego won't allow it. They can't start over, because they have no true self to start from, so they rot. Slowly, in the silence, each person who walks away becomes another shard of the mask falling off. They are no longer feared, no longer adored, no longer in control, and in those long, sleepless nights, they finally begin to realize they never truly learned how to love. They only knew how to manipulate, and for that reason they never truly learned how to be loved. Isolation kills them not with wounds you can see, but with invisible thirsts that gnaw at their spirit day after day. A world without you, without someone to reflect their worth, without anyone to feed their illusion. To them, that is hell on earth. 8. The unrelenting need for revenge and destruction. When a narcissist is fully exposed, they don't retreat in silence. They don't pause to reflect. What rises in them is no longer just hurt. It is the rage of a collapsing ego. You didn't just speak the truth. You shattered the illusion they spent their entire life building. And now, they will do everything in their power to strike back. But revenge doesn't always come immediately. It simmers, it is calculated, it is far more brutal than anything you've ever imagined. Not because they love you, not because they want to fix things, but because their wounded ego needs to see you broken in order to survive. It starts subtly, whispers, rumors, playing the victim. They go around telling others that you were the abuser, the unstable one, the one who destroyed the family. They rewrite history and turn you into the villain, even if you were the one who saved them from their own darkness. If you have children together, they will weaponize them. Every custody exchange becomes psychological warfare. They plant seeds of doubt in your children's minds. They rewrite the story to make you look like the enemy. And none of this is truly about the kids. It's about making you suffer endlessly. If you're financially dependent, they turn money into a battlefield. They withhold support, lock you out of assets, use every connection they have to cut off your access to basic needs. All of it sends one brutal message. No one walks away from me without paying the price. You take them to court, they turn the courtroom into their stage. They cry, they lie, they twist records and drag proceedings out, not to win, but to wear you down, to drain your strength and shake your faith in justice itself. You think they stop when you fall? No. They stop when you're crushed enough not to rise again, because deep inside, they believe you betrayed the role they cast you in, the savior, the empath, the silent sufferer. And your refusal to keep playing that role is the ultimate insult to their ego. Even if you don't fight back, they keep going. Even if you stay silent, they keep pushing. Because to them, victory isn't just about making you lose. It's about making sure you never find peace again. And this is what you must understand. This war is not about you. It's not about love. It's about a hollow identity that cannot stand rejection. So when you expose a narcissist, don't just walk away. Disappear wisely, strategically, with protection. They will retaliate. But you don't have to fall. Just remember, your peace is the greatest revenge they'll never recover from. When you expose a narcissist, you're not just brave. You're doing the one thing they fear most. You stare straight into their darkness and say, I see you. I'm no longer afraid. They may rage, retaliate, smear your name, weaponize your children, turn the court system into chaos, but beneath all that madness lies one undeniable truth. They've lost control, and it's that loss, that brutal, soul-piercing truth, that sends them spiraling into panic. You don't have to scream. You don't need to prove anything, because when a narcissist is exposed, they don't need you to win. They just want to make sure you don't survive it. But you will. You will survive, you will recover, and you will walk out of this war not as a broken victim, but as a survivor who finally knows their worth. If you're in the middle of this storm, remember, your peace is not a reward granted by their apology. It is a victory you claim for yourself. If this video speaks to a wound you've buried deep, share it. Hit subscribe, tap the notification bell and stay with us, because you deserve healing, truth, and a path forward.